Okay, hello and welcome to another API Toolkit customer conversation. Today, I have David Odohi, we would be speaking with and learning from, and he is the engineering lead of the GrovePay platform. Maybe David, could you tell us about you and tell us about GrovePay?
Yeah, my name is David Odohi. Um, I'm the engineering lead of GrovePay. GrovePay is a payment platform that enable users to carry out payment transactions in multiple currencies.
Lovely. How long have you guys been in the market?
I would say just about a year. You know, we launched quite recently, and the growth has been outstanding so far.
That's lovely to hear. So, what's the market you serve, and did you like face any challenges with regards, your systems, your backends, and how did it motivate you to use API Toolkit?
Yeah, so before we started the project, I think I had heard about API Toolkit before, you know, but I only just played around with it, and I played around with it, but didn't like use it in anything in production at that time. So when we started building this project, we knew that security, reliability is one of the or things that we were very particular about, right? So I wanted to make sure that I use or we decide on tools that would achieve these features for us. So it was a very easy decision to use API Toolkit for it. There was no downside to making that decision at all. So
So, okay, interesting. But like, did something happen? Was there like an incident that happened that made you, very happy with the decision or to go all in on the decision?
and so building a product, there's always going to be issues, right? So, like I said, we started from the jump, right? But we are on the free plan. You get so we're just using it and managing stuff like that. But then an incident happened, and we needed to know what the issue was as quickly as possible, right? We didn't want um we knew that something was going on, but we could not pinpoint, what the issue was. And while we were trying to figure out, okay, what is going on, my first thought was, let me see what information I can get from API Toolkit. So I logged in, saw a lot of errors on our APIs and where these errors were coming from. Right, it had these API logs, very detailed API logs with sensitive information redacted already. So I could figure out, okay, this is where it's coming from, the customers that were affected, right? And we are able to get a good insight on what to do to fix it. So that it was really really fast how we could get that information quickly and know exactly what to do to fix the issue.
I don't know if this is something you can share, but like what kind of issue actually happened and how was this information you got on API to keep helpful in the first place? Just could you share more?
Yeah, a lot of transactions were not going through. Right
So
now,
like
we knew
actual like
that
transfer your customers trying to transfer money or something like that on your platform.
exactly, but the there are so many things that happen when there are so many things that happen for a transaction to be successful, right?
Mhm.
So I'm trying to find out where in that pipeline things were going wrong, because we had API Toolkit logging each of those requests and knowing where these issues are happening. We are able to like figure out, okay, this is the part of this process that is failing, right? And we are able to like concentrate on that part and fix the issues there.
I always find it very interesting, when people. I think I had a conversation with another user a week or so ago, and in his situation, he was using API to pretty different way than how I had envisioned that it would be used. So today it's kind of nice that I'm talking to someone who's actually using API to get the way I intended it to be used. But thanks for sharing. So what
Yeah, that's
features of yeah, tell me.
I said that always happens. You build a product and then people use it in ways that you didn't have in mind when you started. And it's quite interesting actually.
Thanks. So what use cases in particular of API Toolkit have been like your go-to? What do you use the most on the platform? Do you use like do you rely on the analytics, metrics kind of things, or the documentation generation, or catching breaking changes, or the log explorer? Like what's your go-to features on the platform?
Yeah, I think the number one feature that we use mostly is the log explorer, right?
Mm.
And then just after that, the error reporting. When
Ah,
we are still building new features, right? So whenever um we have new endpoints, we get these messages that this endpoint is new. This is what we noticed and stuff like that, right? So and then with the way we use API Toolkit, we have it on both staging and production. So before things even get to production, API Toolkit must have caught some of the errors that might be happening on the staging environment before even getting to production. So that's something that I really like, using the same tool on both staging and production and catching most of the errors on staging before even getting to production. Yeah. So yeah, just the API log explorer and then the error reporting.
interesting. So what was your so the first time you had to debug these issues and jump into that explorer, what was your first impression? What was going through your mind at that point?
Yeah. So um at that point, when we had that error was the first time I really, used it in depth, right? It was just there. I would go there once in a while, check the logs and all of that. But then that day we had the incident. I logged in. I saw the query, the query feature that you can use to query the logs, right? So I used that very quickly. I was able to sift through transactions based on the payload that was sent and the response and all of that. It was really really nice. It was like
Mhm.
it made the whole process really really fast. So that was very nice.
So maybe another thing I'm interested in about. So you have your own APIs that I imagine you're exposed to some mobile apps, etc. But you also depend on other providers, right? Like other third parties. Do you also monitor the requests you're making to those third parties to see what they are doing, what breaking changes they are introducing and the like?
Yeah. So right now we are not right.
Mhm.
But I know that API Toolkit has that feature of monitoring, third-party requests, right? We haven't, since when I knew about that feature, we haven't completed that integration yet. I know it's quite fast. We could do that, but there are a lot of things that we need to put in place to make sure that we are doing it the right way and making sure we just want to make sure we are doing everything right. So we are not we are not monitoring our third party API endpoints yet, but it is
Mhm.
definitely something we need. It's a pain point we need to solve.
I was gonna ask if you're one of the few who have like the perfect integrations. Some people are lucky actually, and they have these providers who no errors, nothing goes wrong, everything just runs perfectly all the time. So maybe you're one of the lucky ones.
That's a very small percentage of APIs that have that capability of having very little errors. Most APIs are not built that way. And I think that's one of the problems that um, API Toolkit would solve for a lot of people. If you have tools like API Toolkit and everybody is using that than what it is right now.
But why? Why would it be easier? It sounds like you've at least been traumatized by some of
Oh no.
the providers you
Like,
depend on.
there are so many APIs that are like there are so many issues with the state of how APIs are today, right? One of the things one of the common issues I see is API develop people that build APIs do not take um, the consumers, like they don't have empathy on the consumers, if you get what I mean, right?
Mm,
Um, they have a service they want to provide, right? But the amount of effort put in place to determine how the consumers would use the API, the experience they would the experience they would have in using the APIs,
mm.
not a lot of effort into that. So you tend to see a lot of APIs, you integrate with them, and there's so many errors happening, so many issues. And then apart from that, when introducing breaking changes, there's not a lot of like the communication is not really clear. Or at least even when it's clear, the timeline you are given to like update your systems um to accommodate those new breaking changes is very limited. So there are so many things that can be improved when
This is
building
something
APIs,
you've
and that's
experienced
one thing that we
recently.
are. Yes, yes, definitely, definitely. I've I've been lucky enough to work on multiple projects, right? And on each of these projects, when we try to integrate with third-party APIs, there's always one issue or the other, right? I think the main issue I've had in very, very recently is the issue of breaking changes, right? You can have a system or a service that you are integrating with an API, right? The API almost never gets updated, right? Whenever there is a change being made in the API, just communicated, maybe via messages or email or something, and the main API documentation is not updated.
So you
You
get
might
an
update
email,
it.
you get an
Yeah,
email
you
from
can
the
get an
team
email that,
saying,
oh,
"Hey,
we're changing.
we're gonna change something," but the docs does not say that
Yeah,
thing, does not show that new thing.
let me be more specific, right? We had an issue um, on a particular project we are working on, and an endpoint was returning a different payload from what it used to return, right? Now, we we sent a message to the team and we're like, hey, something is wrong somewhere. This payload, we're not receiving exact same payload we were getting previously. And they told us, oh, use this other endpoint, the V2 endpoint. And I was like, okay, no problem. So we changed our implementation to fit what they said. Now, after a while, that new endpoint stopped working. And we asked again,
Oh.
what's the issue? We had to revert back to the previous endpoint that we were using before that. That endpoint is now working. Now, none of these changes ever made it to the API documentation. If you go to the API documentation, it still remains exactly you know, the way it
Yes.
was. Now, if I bring in let's say I'm working on a project and I try to and I try to integrate with that same service, and I bring in a new dev, and I want to direct the dev to work on, probably a new endpoint on that service or something, right? I have to point them to the API documentation, and if I don't remember that an endpoint changed at some point, they might go there and just follow what is on the documentation, and things will
Which is
not move
incorrect.
smoothly. So yeah,
This is such a
so
common
that's
problem, and I realize I actually have empathy for these teams as well, because so we are in conversations now with Okra, one of our I don't know, one of the African fintech companies. And from their perspective, the problem they have, they have a big team, they have a lot of engineers, but they also have a documentation team separately. The documentation team is responsible for, keeping the public developer documentation in good shape, writing new fields, etc. But when we had a conversation, they were like that. The problem that they have is that the developers are supposed to tell them anytime they've rolled out a change or a breaking change. But the developers always forget for many reasons. Sometimes they're just rolling out a quick bug fix quick hot fix, and they make that quick fix, quick change, deploy, and then they forget, we should have told the docs team that something has changed. And
Yeah.
that for them that was like, all the other catch this error that we're doing in API Toolkit. They were like, yeah, those are very nice, but this one problem, probably they have a customer like you at GrovePay who has been on their neck because, hey, their dogs, tend to go out of date so often. So I know my point is that I know that problem that you're describing.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm just sad that it's not a it's like it's a known issue, and it's not it's a very like it's a popular issue, not just one service that has that kind of issue. A lot of APIs are not that great. A lot.
Their documentations are always out of date. Maybe everyone should just integrate API Toolkit already. But okay. So thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing, those situations you've experienced. Did you experience any other, like, outside of the breaking changes, any other common issues with either your own APIs or your own backend systems or systems you depend on that are painful, both the ones that API Toolkit solves and the ones it doesn't? Maybe we get feature requests from here.
From apart from breaking changes, right? Um, I think having a standard on APIs would be great. Not everybody followed the same standard in terms of I've had to integrate a service where the API documentation was sent to me as a PDF file, right? And reading through the PDF file was stressful. Yeah. You know, it was the API documentation. I would say it seemed to me like a business proposal being sent to another business rather than an API documentation. you know, I had to figure out a lot of things. It wasn't really clear. There was a lot of back and forth between, okay, what does this mean? You know, there was a lot of
So,
issues. If we have a standard where, like, we do have a standard like Open API, right? But not everybody
mhm,
uses that. You know,
yeah.
so yeah, so adopting a standard that is well known to everybody, that is easier for developers to read and use, would be really great.
When you describe that standard point, it just reminded me of, I don't know, many years ago when I had to integrate NIP. And it's exactly the same way we got the documentation, a PDF file with all the code examples in the PDF, no syntax highlighting or anything. It's just like, send this XML, you get it like this. That's how I feel.
Um,
I even remember a particular provider, I think it was Starcoms or Starlinks or something, I don't remember, who, I mean, I would be happy if you give me an XML SOAP API and say, okay, send this via SOAP, no problem. But when you say send me the reports, like send me all the transactions you've performed every day by 12 noon to an FTP endpoint as PDF.
yeah, wow.
We're a tech company, we have these web services and all of this. Now we have to figure out how to, we cannot be manually generating or uploading those PDFs every day. So you have to figure out how to manually generate this report in the way they want, in this PDF style, and then automatically uploading it to FTP, and then, trying to, I don't even remember how we're going to get errors. So if something did not go well, if they could not process it somehow, they would like upload another FTP file somewhere. This was my trauma, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago. But anyway,
I can't begin to imagine the stress.
oh, people who work in B2B enterprise, B2B industries, man, the trauma all of them have.
You know, yeah. Well, it's understandable because most of them don't want to. The system is working fine for them. So to them, why change? Why change it?
Yeah, I totally understand.
Yeah, but it's really bad. It's really bad because people building new startups cannot build on that because it will take a lot of effort to get something that would have rather be really simple to get them done.
Exactly. Anyway, so let's just head back to the API Toolkit loop a little bit. So you described that you had these challenges where things would go wrong. So, for example, some third parties could go wrong, and then you had to like figure out, okay, where exactly did things go wrong, so you can debug and fix. Did API Toolkit solve or help you solve those problems? And what other problems or what other use cases have you found yourself using API Toolkit for since then?
Apart from the API logs, where we once in a while go there to check to make sure that to pinpoint where errors are coming from. Um, some other log explorer that we use on GCP Cloud Run. I tried using that recently to figure out where an issue is coming from, but all it logs is just the endpoint, the IP address it's coming from, and the status code that was returned. Nothing more than that. And then any other log that you log to standard. So that it wasn't really helpful. It wasn't helpful at all because and the reason why I went there was because I was on GCP trying to get something else done, and then I needed to check the logs quickly. So I just went straight to the logs, and I couldn't get what I wanted there. So I had to go to API Toolkit to check the log. So that's mostly what I use very very frequently. But I think one thing that would really help is if I'm able to plot custom graphs to know what endpoints are being used more, you know, what endpoint is not being used at all, because sometimes it might create an endpoint and it's just there doing nothing, right? Um, I don't think as developers we ever go back to delete endpoints that are not being used. You know, we just add new features every day, and we forget to like go back and delete stuff. So that would be really helpful, in knowing things that are not being used, or at least things that are not probably useful. You get, yeah.
Two things. One, about being able to plot custom graphs. So this is a feature that will be rolled out soon. We've been improving the query language, the API Toolkit query language, so you can plot time charts, like time series. You want to plot any field inside your payload. So since you are like a bank or a financial application, you can say plot the amount in this endpoint, this amount field, plot the total of this amount field over time, and then you get a
Yeah,
chart, or just plot, I don't know, a pie chart of our transaction types or something. So we have this, which will be rolled out soon.
be nice to have.
But the actual use case which you describe, which is to be able to find which endpoints are not used as much. The good thing is that you can do this already, even right now on API Toolkit. So if you go to
Oh,
the
really?
endpoints page, yes, if you go to the endpoints page, and I'm thinking if it's a good idea to share my screen and show. But if you go to the endpoints page at the moment, let me just show. You can see and query or sort the endpoints by how often they are used. Let me just share my screen and show a test project stuff. So share screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So as I was saying, so you can, for example, here you can see like this is just a test project, but you can see different endpoints. You can see how many requests were made for this endpoint in the last 14 days or 24 hours if you want. And you can easily sort by that. So I can sort by the number of events, and this will just sort it, by the how many events. This project doesn't have quite as many examples to show, but you can see that the last item is the one with the less, I don't know, number of requests,
Mm.
and in some cases it would be zero.
Yeah.
So that's just an easy example. So you can solve this problem at the moment But in the
Yeah,
Log Explorer, we're still rolling out the ability to create time charts, so you can plot anything you want as a chart.
that's awesome. That's awesome. I would definitely be using that because, although the reason why we don't delete endpoint that often is because you might think, oh, an endpoint is not being used, so let me just go and delete it. And then one day you realize that it's being used somewhere. So yeah, if
Mm,
we have that, we can monitor it over time and see, and make sure that it's being used, and then we can just deprecate it.
exactly. Okay, that is lovely to hear. What about how do you track all the errors in your platform at the moment? So not just errors in the APIs, but even code errors. You want to associate uh, code errors to the requests that are triggering it, and how often is this particular error happening? Do you have that integrated via APIToolkit, or do you use something like
Yeah.
Sentry or something else?
Now, so we're a startup and we make sure that, at least for me, right? You the number one thing that you want is reliability in a system like
Mm-hmm.
this, right? So we make sure that we use tools um, that are reliable, but then at the same time, we don't want to spend, the old
I like
budget, right? So
yeah. I like how
so
you
I
started with,
so what
we're
I
a
do for
startup.
error, yeah. So reporting, I make sure that whenever an error that we um when we build new features, there are errors that we know that we definitely want to know about this error. Immediately it happens. Immediately happens, we want to know about these errors. So we have a way of alerting us when things go wrong so that we are able to jump on it as quickly as possible. Right? We have our own mechanism for that. We don't use any third party tool for doing that as of yet.
What about like
Yeah.
just aggregating? It's like you go to a dashboard, you see, okay, this error happened. This is how many times it's been happening in the last week. So maybe I should prioritize this error or not. No, I think that's what I mean.
Yeah. So I don't think we have that at the moment in terms of
Mm,
aggregating errors. We just make sure that whenever we get errors that are very important, we get notified about it immediately and then just
okay,
as
that
quickly as
makes
possible.
sense. Thanks. Well, the good thing is you can integrate it on API Toolkit and you get it for free, to be honest. There's no extra cost to reporting your errors to API Toolkit.
Does that include normal runtime errors apart from API errors?
Exactly. Exactly. Let me see if I can share my screen again, and maybe there's in this project I didn't prepare any like test project or something for this conversation. So
You can
hope
see
there's
you can see what's going on. We're talking
oh
about
yeah, so here's an example.
yeah, we're talking about getting um errors on time and documenting our APIs. But apparently I'm not um I don't have the latest gist on the new features that you have on API Toolkit.
So the good thing is that now I get to show you in person. So here's an example in this request. So this request, even though this particular request returned a 200, like
Yeah.
something went wrong. So there was an error, and then maybe they just like, I don't know, did some fallbacks or something. So if I expand this request, I can see the list of all the errors that happened during this request, including their stacked traces. So this is an undefined function error, something is undefined. I can expand it and I can see um, also here, just the same stack trace in details. And if we go to the changes and errors, we also aggregate these errors in there. But yeah, but that's basically what I mean. That you see the actual runtime errors from your code, including, where in the code these errors are coming from. In this case, I can see that it is in this page controller action, something, something, something. This is a Phoenix, Elixir Phoenix project. Yeah.
Wow, that's
So any
nice.
request that had runtime errors, you can see it by this thread besides it that there was a runtime error.
Awesome. Nice, 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 nice. So I'll definitely be needing this alongside the third party um, API um, login as well. So yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Does it require any okay, what's the requirement to have that enabled?
Again, it depends on your tech stack. I know your tech stack is Go. You have a Golang SDK. So in a lot of tech stacks that allow you, just like throw exceptions and things like that, we catch those exceptions and show them automatically. But in something like Go, in Go you pass the errors by value. So you can simply call a function called API toolkit for any error, and what it's going to do is it's going to take that error, within, if especially if it's within a request, it knows the request, the current request, and it associates that error to that current request. So just like you're able to see the responses, requests and responses your customers are making, or the requests and responses you're making to third parties, you can also see the errors that were associated with that request and response or third party. So it's
Awesome.
one line of code, I guess, for each error. Or if you are throwing exceptions, then the exceptions would be shown automatically as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, okay. So the next bit of questions that I want to ask is, I don't know if I should ask this, but let me just ask, has your workflow changed since you started using API Toolkit? Like your regular workflow.
Regular workflow changed as in has it improved? Because change
Hopefully it
can be
has improved. If it has gotten worse, please tell me as well. So I can maybe, say, okay, API Toolkit are working. Maybe we should shut down now.
yeah, definitely, definitely it has changed and it has improved. There are so many times that um when errors when we build the system, we try to make sure that when things fail, we get notified. But we are all humans, right? So there are some things that you don't see coming, right? So whenever things like that happen, the first thought is always, okay, let me check API toolkit and see um, what went wrong. So it has definitely improved because without it, we would have to like do a lot to try and replicate those issues. And
Mm,
replicating of payment is not that easy, right? So yeah, definitely that's improved. So we can now know where the issue is coming from,
mm.
narrow it
Have
down.
you have you
Yeah,
used any similar platforms in the past? How do you think API Toolkit compares to those ones you've used in the past?
similar platforms. So I wouldn't say really similar, but something like Prometheus, right, for metrics
Mm,
and stuff like that. And this low key that Grafana
okay,
provides.
okay.
So I've used those tools before, but I think one thing that API Toolkit stands out from those is the ease of implementation, right? I remember when I added API Toolkit, I just copied the example code, right? Modified it, redacted the information I didn't want, redacted some sensitive information, and that was all, you know, like that was all. And then I go to the dashboard, I see a lot of information with very little
Mm,
um, effort, So that's one thing that you know that
yes,
I'm
mm.
really happy about. And I can't
Okay, well,
remember the
that
last time,
okay.
like not I can't remember, I've never had to touch that code ever since.
That's good to hear. So would you recommend API Toolkit to other people?
Definitely, I have done that already to so many people.
That's nice to hear. Okay. So the last set of questions is, what do you think we should improve? What challenges have you run into? We're also a startup, so there are lots of things that are not perfect. But if there was a particular one, two, three things that you could get us to prioritize, what would those be? And what challenges have you
Yeah,
experienced so far on the platform?
yeah. The first one would be when you have new features. Maybe you have like an email or something that says, "Hey, we now have this feature enabled. You can start using it today and stuff like that."
We're doing a bad job at sending out this kind of updates. I know, but I
Yeah,
agree. I agree.
that would like I said, like I just knew that we can aggregate those endpoints and their usage just now on the call. Maybe if I looked more, if I looked at the dashboard more, I would have been able to find it. But yeah, that email would help a lot. I think we mentioned this earlier, alerting when some
Yeah.
certain error threshold happen. So, for example, that error reporting that those runtime error reporting you showed me just now. If it happens, maybe say 5 times in 2 minutes or something, you know, then we should be able to get a notification that okay, this has happened this number of minutes.
Mhm.
Yeah, that would be really helpful.
Okay. Thanks for sharing. I think we'll prioritize that. I agree with you that we should send out more of these notifications. And yeah, we have a lot of people who sign up and really want to know how things are progressing, what functionality came in the last weeks or months, and we're doing bad at that. Okay. Is there anything you would like to say to startups, who are looking at API Toolkit but are still skeptical or on the fence? Anything you would like to say to them?
Yeah. So the number one thing that when building a product like GrovePay, the first thing you get skeptical about a product like API Toolkit is login sensitive information, right? Um, that at least for me, that was the first thing I was thinking in my mind. Okay, if I use this, how do I redact some of this information? And then when I looked into the documentation, I saw how easy it was. So it was a no-brainer for me to just get started using it. So
Mm,
I would say to anybody that wants to build a product, just integrate it. Very easy to integrate, and then you definitely see the usefulness, definitely
that's
right from the jump.
Thanks, David. So, any last words for us? Any feedback? Any last words?
Well, I would say thank you for building a good product. It has been really really helpful and has made um, enabling payment for a lot of businesses really smooth. So thanks.
Okay. So, thanks a lot, David. Thanks for your time. Thanks for all the very valuable feedback, which we will be working on. And thanks for being our customer and being with us right from the beginning, to be honest. And I hope stay along with us for the rest of the journey. And I wish you a lot of success with GrovePay and with pretty much every other project you find yourself working on. And thank you.
All right, thanks.
So take care.